welcome everybody to Love Speaks Love. It's been a while. I am very excited to be chatting to Julie Dhara Roberts. Welcome, sweetheart.
Thank you, Denise. Thanks so much for inviting me on. So nice to see you.
My pleasure. I'm excited. It's been ages. Okay, I'm just gonna double check the sound is okay and everything on Facebook. Turn that sound down. We've got people there already. Hello, everybody. Feel free to say hi, say where you're receiving us from if you want to. I'm hearing a little sound. Are you getting that as well? I'll double check. I'll make sure that the sound is okay for everyone else. If it is, then I won't do anything about it. It's a weird sound. I can't even describe it.
Is it like an overlay? We were just talking about the galactic stuff before we got
yeah, like actually
radio waves overlay is
yeah, it's like almost like the old you know those old, what were they called, those radio things where it did it then. If it carries on, I will put my headphones in. Okay, so we normally start with a little heart-to-heart connect, it being Love Speaks Love. So I think I might have to put my headphones in actually. I'll do it when you're speaking and then I won't get distracted. Okay, so I invite us all to bring our awareness to our heart space in the center of our chest. And let us breathe into our hearts. Let's breathe love into our hearts. Bringing our awareness fully here. And you might feel your heart just beginning and your body just beginning to slow down a little bit, relax. You might feel your heart just beginning to expand. Connecting our hearts to the heart of Gaia, or becoming conscious of that connection that's already there. Feeling Gaia's love moving into our bodies. Feeling her appreciation. Connecting to the heart of the sun. That will be part of what we talk about today, and feeling that solar energy, those solar codes. Moving into our hearts, into our bodies, into every cell. And feeling the connection between our hearts and Source Creator. Feeling source energy moving into our bodies, into our heart. Connecting now all of our hearts together on this live or on the replay. Feeling all of our hearts together in the one unified field as one. Connected with the heart of the universe. And I'll hand over to you, Julie, just if there is anything you wish to add to that.
This, what came for me when Denise was guiding our energy flow there was the column, the central column in your energy field. So if your eyes are open, close them again. And breathe up and down your central column, which lives in a quantum space, an energy space right in front of your spine, deep inside your body. And as Denise connected us to the heart of the earth and the heart of the sky, the galaxy, the sun. Breathe light up and down your central column. And this filament of life, this central channel of life force distribution in your being. This is your core, your essence. So remember how this feels in this moment, and we'll be coming back and visiting this again as we talk and flow. Should we do a tone? Om, universal. That's the most. So let's take a nice breath. You did get your headphones in. You did it. Nice job.
I did it mainly with my eyes closed, apart from plugging it in.
Did we check and make sure the sound is good and all that good?
Does my sound okay to you?
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay. Well, no one's saying it's off, so I'm assuming it's all good. Okay, so
with your headphones on, actually, so that's good.
Okay, brilliant. So we, as we've been saying for the last few years, are in unprecedented times. The amount of energy that's coming down on the planet just consistently seems to be increasing. And I think it's amazing how much we can tolerate in our bodies. And you were saying that today, I'll let you speak on this. I don't even know how much I can say of it, but it's something to do with this, the sun being closely aligned to the Galactic Centre.
That's so when Denise, hi everybody. So nice to be here. This is nice, Denise. Thanks. I haven't done video like an online sharing in months and months and months. I've been in a quiet lunar mode, so it's nice to come out enjoying the sunlight again. But yeah, when Denise asked me on, we were figuring dates that would work for both of us. And when this Tuesday dropped in, this December 19th, I was like, oh, that's perfect, because we're in the Galactic Center Earth Sun alignment. And she was like, oh, great, let's talk about that, because I don't exactly know what you mean. Or, she was like, but if you know what I mean, but you're like, that's a great thing to talk about. So, so the celestial sphere is the dome of the sky, the dome of space, and the Milky Way, which if you live in a place you have dark night skies, you can even see it every night. From our city or suburban places, it's hard to see these days. But that band of light that stretches across a dark night sky is the sphere, the disk of the Milky Way galaxy. Like basically because of the words accretion, but like because of how the galaxy is formed, most of the stars, the content of the galaxy exists like on a dinner plate, if you will, like on a flat surface, right? So that like band we're seeing is really the swirl of our own galaxy. So there's a spot on the Milky Way that's in our night sky. It's not particularly something you can see because there's a lot of space things in the way, but that it's where if we point to that direction out beyond, in the deeps of space, is the center of our galaxy. So there's a spot there. So it's right where the Sagittarius constellation, Scorpio constellation, and Ophiuchus, that like where those three come together. I was looking at the map of it the other day. It's really right. So you know how Sagittarius is like an archer? They pull the bow back, and it's basically at the tip of the bow. So the closest star is Sagittarius 3 is near it, but it's basically like, so I said, like, there's nothing like glimmery to look at in that area per se, except it is a bright spot of the Milky Way. So that's what I was saying. Like our sun today it's the 18th to the 20th, like around this zone, none of these galactic things are like a single day, but the sun moves as close as it gets. So yesterday, so I'm just talking, this is not astrology, but this is more cosmology, like where the sun is literally in the constellations. The sun was in, again, I was like, do you know how to say that? I know I read it all the time. Ophiuchus, how do you say it?
I don't know, but that sounds all right. Is that Ophes?
Yeah. And it's like one of those things I always say in my own head, but I'll say if someone else could correct. I'm sure someone will gladly correct us. They're so good at that. But Ophiuchus is the 13th zodiac, some people call it. It's along the ecliptic. So the sun was there yesterday, December 18th, and today the sun is in Sagittarius. So we're right at that meeting line where the sun, Sagittarius, and the Scorpio constellation come together. I'll drop a little picture of that in the comments of this when we're done. People can see. So anyway, that when the sun gets there, I find from my gatekeeping, my celestial gatekeeping, that wherever the sun is in the sky, the things it's around help it, like it sends more codes our way. Like solar codes are imbued with, say the sun aligns with Venus, or the sun goes next to Jupiter, or the sun is next in the Taurus constellation, or wherever it is in the sky, the sun broadcasts codes to us that are from that sector, right? So they're like in kind of by entrainment or attunement, it's just like more singing that song of that constellation. Does that make sense? So when the sun is where it is these days, these beautiful December days right before solstice, we get more of the galactic song signature coming through on the sun rays. So it's like the sun is singing to us a galactic like lullaby, if you will, or it's not necessarily a lullaby because some of us are up all night singing with, right? It's like affects everyone a little differently, but there's an outpouring of floodgates, if you will, of galactic code, galactic center code that comes our way. So what scientists have talked about that's at the center of our galaxy, the rotational center, which they call the barycenter, but that where it spins around is Sagittarius A star. So it's Sagittarius, capital letter A, and it has an asterisk next to it. And then that's what they say, Sagittarius A star, not as in star in the sky, but asterisk. And it's a radio source. So some waves from stars, from the galaxy, from space, come through a visible light spectrum. Much, much, much more is waves that come through either in the gamma spectrum or the radio spectrum. So you've heard like the radio telescopes, or what astronomers use to see, almost like night vision goggles. You know how you can see night vision goggles, you can see heat signatures, you can see that red scape. That's like astronomers use radio telescopes to see the radio waves emitted from space objects. So Sagittarius A star is a radio source very close to the center of our galaxy. So it's literally, when we talk about broadcasting, it is that. It's like broadcasting a certain frequency. I just said a lot of things. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, I just want to ask. So there are certain, say, characteristics or energies that maybe are associated with Taurus or with any of those. What might the characteristics be, or how might we perceive the energy coming from the galactic center? Is that a question you can answer?
Yeah, direct source code to me. That's what I think. It's like direct source code. So in our solar system, the sun acts as our main light broadcasting thing. And we get our light, our heat, our life codes from the sun. The sun is but one of many stars in the galaxy. So the center of the Milky Way. And one of the things I wanted to point out, we did that meditation of the central channel. So our Milky Way galaxy is a barred spiral galaxy, meaning it doesn't have a single sphere, if you will, in the middle, but it has a long line, filament of light. So I feel like our bodies are coded as galactic beings through our own, in yoga we call it the Sushumna, the central channel, the main meridian. And all the prana, all the life force gets distributed into the energy field, into the body, into the mind, emotion, multi-dimensional field through that central channel. So it's like the main highway, super highway of prana, of life force. So the same is true for the galaxy. So that, like, I wonder, this is like a contemplation of mine. I feel like beings that are born and raised in a different galaxy might have a whole different geometrical energy body structure. Like they might not have a Sushumna. That's why it's like some, they might have a whole different, imagine like what that, it's like a different, like we're familiar with our own makeup, if you will, the central channel and the nadis that distribute off that. But I feel like that's coded in us as Milky Way galactic citizens. Just a pondering, an inner space pondering. So anyway, didn't answer your question. What did you ask? What's coming through? So it's life force, it's direct source code. And then the galaxy, so people talk about the central sun. So we have our sun, and then people talk about the central sun. So when I've heard that term, to me, that's the center of the galaxy. And then people talk about the great central sun. So the great central sun is like one logos rung up. It's the center of the core of the universe. So the core of the universe is singing a song of life and light. And then it gets rebroadcasted in each galaxy, if you will. Like there's hundreds of thousands of galaxies around in our universe. And then each galaxy, each galactic center is a broadcast station or a light source, radio source, radiation emanation source. So the short answer to what you asked is life force, light.
And so presumably the effects of that on the body, I guess it's making everything speed up. It's making everything kind of jiggle about a lot more, shaking out energies that are not in alignment with that, which is why we can feel like we're detoxing on all levels. Like that might be a physical detox of toxins in our bodies, but it might be an energetic detox as well. So we can just feel perhaps emotions coming up. And you can't really hide from this, can you? Like, we're on the planet. You can't really separate yourself from this.
Yeah, some people, you can be more co-creative and conscious with the process and more allowing and like, oh, I'm not just going totally crazy. It's not just, it's not just me in my own little bubble. It's like, it's an energetic thing. It's a collective thing. It's a ascension thing. It's the whole, but yeah, it's like, it puts it in like a bit global or like broader perspective. Always helps. But yes, no, you can't hide, but there's a lot of people that might be not aware of the broader influence and they're just like in their own little personal ball of hell, kind of thing, like so it's but yes, for everybody it brings up like shaking it up to the surface. Like the more and more light we get, the more the distortions get loud, the more the purging, the more the things that aren't of that light get burned away.
And does this affect the magnetosphere and the magnetic field of the Earth, or is that a separate thing?
Yeah, it doesn't, that I know, the like where the sun is in the sky, because really it's like from no, the short answer is no, not that I know of. That's more like local to us. This is like farther away, and like the galaxy doesn't know that it's Galactic Center Day. Like it's a normal day to the center of the galaxy. It's just like it's all about where we are on Earth. And as we look towards the sun, then when we look past the sun, then we're like, oh, that's that day that we're aligned. So it's more something for us to notice here on Earth. Makes sense, but it's not like
yeah, so the frequencies are always there from the Galactic Centre. It's just that we're shifting more into those frequencies so we can be more aware of them.
Yeah, or the sun, like even the light of the sun has more of that signature of galactic energy. So it might make each one of us, it awakens different things in each of us, in our hearts and our energy fields. But you asked about the magnetosphere. No, that's more controlled by like the sun's activity, not galactic.
Yeah.
When the sun is burping off a lot of plasma, it protects the Earth so that Earth has a stronger magnetosphere. But when the sun is quiet, the Earth is more vulnerable or like receptive to other waves. But that's more like a sun-Earth magnetosphere thing.
Okay. I might go back to that. I'm just writing myself a note there. But just to go back to what you said about the central sun and the great central sun. So they are not necessarily suns as such. They are called a sun, but they're not necessarily a star in the sky.
They have never appeared that way to me. No, they're not. They're like a emanation source. But there's nothing that we can point to that's the center of the universe. Like some people subscribe to the Big Bang theory of creation, which I don't think I necessarily do, or think, but like that, maybe you could think of that as the great central sun, that emanation point. But I think it's more of like a sponda, like a pulse that we've been pulsing back and forth for. But yeah, they're not suns like our star, the sun.
Yeah.
No, not like that.
Yeah.
They're more complicated or different creatures than that.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Does that resonate? That's always because it's like, then I think folks get, I don't want to say confused because that sounds pejorative, but like there's a lot of, the game, the telephone game, where like I whisper something in your ear and you whisper it to the next person and they whisper to the next person and on and on. And you try to see if you get the original thing back. There's a lot of bad game of telephone that goes on in our communities where like someone will say something, like for instance, that Alcyon is the central sun or something. It's like, that's not like, that's just gets, there's a point to that, like a scientific point to that, but it's not what people think, and it just gets repeated and repeated and repeated as if it's true. So there's a lot of distortions or misinterpretations, I think, that go along with that. So, or like, because it's a vast topic to contemplate, so it's like, or people try to put things in. But there, I want to say, so that since I brought up that Alcyon, the central sun, so our galaxy is a spiral galaxy, and it has that, so it has a central bar, and then it has spiral arms of streams of stars, like a bunch of different stars. So it's like if we're, I haven't been to England, I hope to come soon, but you've got like the main highway, right? And then you have the smaller roads that branch off of that. So you have like the main, like central fair, and then like all the smaller highways that branch off of that, and then the neighborhoods that branch off of that. So say there's like 4 or 5 main spiral arms in the galaxy, the stars that are in each of those streams are like, neighbors, if you will, like cousins, or like they live in the same town, galactic town. So they kind of speak the same language, and they have similar qualities. And they were birthed, all the stars in our galaxy were birthed in the Galactic Center. So I guess if you ask about what the Galactic Center is, it's really a birther of stars. And it's distributed by down these streams. So we live in one of the spiral arms of the galaxy, and like all the things that are in our galactic arm are the Pleiades, Sirius, Monoceros, Orion. So we're in the Orion spur. So the things like that people will talk about hearing from the most, like the star, some people call star families, star communities, the stars that we hear from the most are the ones that are in our galactic neighborhood, the ones that are in the arm of our galaxy. So it's like the galaxy, that radio source at the center of the galaxy is broadcasting its life codes. And then each star in the galaxy is like a rebroadcasting station. Almost like in your house, like we have Wi-Fi, we have a modem, right? But the places in the distance part of the house, we need like a repeater to make that signal strong in my office, which is above the garage, right? Same thing in the galaxy, like each star, like our sun Solaris acts like a galactic network repeater, or So it's sending out the codes of life.
So kind of like an amplifier as well, like a kind of converter, almost like the energy goes into the sun and then it converts it to a language or whatever that resonates with Earth. Does that?
Yeah. Well, it's
Yeah.
like the substrata of life that the Earth is birthed in. It's like everything. It's like the people call it the blueprint or the divine blueprint. It's that field.
Can we just touch a little before we about the aurora borealis and how much more prevalent that is now than it was. It's in places where you wouldn't normally see it. So we would, in the UK, we'd see it in the far north of Scotland, but more recently it's been much more prevalent across the country. And do you know, is that something that you can speak to?
Sure. Just to be clear, it's like a whole separate topic, but I'm glad to chat about it. It's been very exciting. And so we're in the sun itself goes through different solar cycles. So there's times where it's kind of quiet and doesn't have a lot of activity, meaning solar flares or coronal mass ejections. And the sun goes through these cyclic maximum and minimum. So we're moving towards the solar maximum. We're in solar cycle 25, according to the scientists. There's many more cycles than that, but that they've been charting. And we're on the uptick. So the sun is much more active right now. And when the sun is very active, it unleashes, I lovingly call it burp, because it is kind of like that. It's like bloop, bloop, and we get a solar flare. And some of them stay local to the sun because they're not that strong. They just kind of like lift up like a filament off you've seen the pictures, maybe the NASA pictures. And some of them get a bloop, it's like, there's a whole bunch of plasma our way. But it's going from the sun in 360 directions. So sometimes like the blue is directed out at Mars or Venus. So when one of those like plasma is from the sun comes towards Earth, it's a whole. So what plasma is gas that's superheated that has electrons have like freed themselves from the atoms and the electrons are flowing. So they call it an ionized gas, right? So plasma is gas with a charge. And those electrons streaming towards Earth, the plasma flow, interfaces with our atmosphere. And it's because of the toroidal magnetic fields of the Earth, those electron streams pool at the poles. So the South Pole and North Pole, us being Northern Hemisphere dwellers, our continents get more of the northern lights, the aurora borealis, but there are Australis borealis, the Southern Hemisphere too gets those for our brothers and sisters down there. It's that like the pole, it's the toroidal field of the Earth that moves those extra electrons that come in the gas of the sun. And they end up pooling and collecting, kind of like, at the ocean when you have like an eddy or like the extra electrons pool up at the North Pole, if we're talking about the aurora borealis. And when the sun is extra active, or the geometry of it is just so that it gets to the Earth in the right angles, both of those affect. So that the KP index is a measure of like how much extra electrons are about, right? So, but that's also because we're near the solstice point, it depends on like the angle of the Earth and how it's tipped in relation to the sun and where we are in seasons. Because we're near the northern hemisphere is near the solstice. There's like an extra angular thing. So like a lot of that. So the angle's a little different. But when it moves down, it just means that there's so much electrons, like the hair of the aurora gets like a little longer. We see it in more southern latitudes. Did that answer what you were asking? So it's like a tip angle of it, but if you look at some of the charts, it's like sometimes you can just see it with a little ring right around here. Pretend my head's the Earth in this demo. But then sometimes you can see it like in a farther swath, and sometimes it moves down to the southern latitudes. So that's more a function of the solar activity and how it's interfacing with the Earth. But not every solar flare gives us auroras because they don't all make it to the Earth atmosphere.
And just for perspective as well, so there's C-class flares, M-class flares, and X-class flares. And C-class, we don't really feel those. They're not really significant to us, possibly.
I think everyone feels everything, and they're all significant. But yeah, they're not like as impactful.
Yeah. Sure. And do you have any idea of the numbers? Because I know the number of M-class and X. Was it something like, I don't know, there were only 5 in 2017 of the M-class, and now we're having like, sometimes we have many a day, something like that. And the X-class numbers have gone up as well.
Everything's gone up because with the days that year you were talking about was more closer to solar minimum, where the sun activity is just quieter. And we're moving towards the solar maximum. And that sun's much more active. So yes, we're getting a lot more, but all the flares this year. And some of the scientists, the space scientists, are saying that it's extra active, like we're moving faster towards the maximum than ever before. This keeps coming through. I don't this is one of the geeky things that lives in the back of my brain, but it's supposed to come out my lips right now. So you generally, this solar cycle is, they say it's an 11-year cycle, or 11.6, right? Like it goes up and it goes down. Mm-hmm. So I read this really fascinating journal article that some planetary physics, solar physics scientists or plasma scientists are looking at the sun is actually it's not just in a single like sine wave of up and down. It's in alternating like 17-year, like there's 2 17-year cycles that are overlapping upon each other. And that resonated like, in the back part of my both, like gatekeeper brain and my scientist brain like was back. I was like, oh, that feels right. Like it's probably not just one single like 11-year up and down sine curve, right? Like that's just like too neat and tidy. The universe is usually more complicated than that. But that like if we're at this place where those 2 17-year cycles are, there's a lot. I think there's a lot going on multidimensionally for sure. Because of course, I quote like what space scientists or weather, space weather people are about, but they're just looking at one human perspective. Like people like you and I look at it like from the much more multidimensional, and that like spirit, like creator source code. So ascension, like one way to think of ascension, or that in the yoga scriptures and Vedas, they would talk about the yugas or the cycles. So we were talking about the center of the galaxy, and that our solar system is in one of those spiral arms, and we're orbiting around, the center of our galaxy, right? So that's like a galactic cycle of like when we move from all the way around a galactic year, if you will, is like 260,000 years that it takes our solar system. It takes Earth like 365 days to go around the sun. It takes the sun 250,000 years to go around the center of the galaxy. And while that's happening, there are parts of space, like we're not just sitting still in space and like rotating like a simple top, right? The whole galaxy and solar system is moving like a car or spaceship driving through the world, like through the universe, right? So we move through our galaxy as a whole moves through parts of space that have more, they're called cosmic streams. Like there's just like filaments or streams of stellar matter in space. So parts of space are really dark and there's not much light or anything there. It's vacuum. And then parts of it, we move like more into, in our solar system, there's mostly space, but then the asteroid belt has a lot of those little particles, right? It's sort of like that, but they're like stars or streams or activities and nebulas. So our galaxy is moving through the universe, and we're like moving into this part of the galaxy and part of space that has a lot of light sources, stars, nebulas. So it's like ascension is that. So in the yugas, they would talk about the golden age, the silver age, you know, the and so on. Like there's 4 different ages, and we're moving, like we're in ascension is moving towards the golden age. But then like there's a cycle of it where we do go fall into forgetfulness again, and we go back to silver and back around. It's in a galactic sense, it's like we're in that part of the galaxy where the cosmic streams are very flowy. So we're getting all that light code content. And then maybe we're back to a place where we don't have as much of that. So we're not like getting the source codes. So that whole like activity of moving through and is all like we're co-participating with all of it. But as we talk about, there's more light coming now. You said at the start of the whole conversation with that, right? It's like there's more light coming. And I think for some people that sounds like fanciful or sound, you know, it's intangible. It's a better word, right? But it's actually, it's not. It's like it's tangible electron plasma. It's like as real as sunlight, which is very real, right? It's like, but it's less tangible because we can't see it or hear it, but we can. We all have our tools we use. So it's yes, it's affecting our human bodies massively. So this whole thing of like the more light that you're exposed to, then you get your own personal choice of like, how much light am I going to let in? How much light can I conduct and anchor through me? And that question becomes like, you can do as much as you want. As the more of that, the dark matter, the fears, the unwanted thoughts, the emotions, the detritus in the body, the toxins, the chemicals, the stress, the like memory in our fascia. I know you're big into fascia, like all like the whole the body stores all the, what's that book everybody's reading or everybody read last year? The body holds the memory. It's like, yeah, we're on that. We're like, it's been like that way for forever. But the body hold, like the more you can clear and cleanse out your body, the more light can flow through you, the more light you can hold, the more light you conduct. And this time that we're in right now is like the most exciting, the most illuminated, the most possible. And then the humans, like from some limited perspective, it seems like the world's going to shit, right? And the world is like the worst it's ever been. But we know better. And we're like, no, it's like, because there's so much light pouring in, all that dense dark stuff is just getting like brought to the surface. And like, and we're all asking ourselves, how much more dark stuff can be in there? Like, how much more dark stuff can be in there? Aren't I done purging the dark stuff? And it's like, no, you're not. Keep going. Keep going, you grasshopper. It's like that, like whatever your practice is, walks in nature, yoga, qigong, sound tools, chanting, you know, whatever like your thing is to try to move the dense energy that's in you so that you can conduct more of this light. Because it is, like you said at the very beginning, it's like there's so much, it is in our lifetime more light than we've ever experienced ever before. And it's fun, it's cool, and it's all consuming, and it's intense, and it's like nauseating, and it's beautiful, and it's you know, bringing you to this leveling of like, oh, I gotta clear out all these emotional, like all this old stuff, and then like nothing like, at least for those of us that celebrate at this time, nothing like the holidays and the family coming to visit and all that stuff that'll bring it all like right up to the forefront.
I would love, I didn't introduce you in the beginning because you've been on so many times, but I would love you to just do a little, because you have this amazing inner marriage of the scientific and the spiritual, really, like you've really, those two worlds that often in the past were kind of like not coming together at all. You've really like merged that within yourself. I'd love you to just share a little bit about how you're able to speak around this so beautifully, and also where you're kind of spiritual, because you know you speak about both so well.
Oh, that's sweet. Thank you. I appreciate that. From when I was a little kid, I was always just like stars, like space. Anytime anyone talked about anything space, anytime I saw stars, and I got glasses when I was like 9. You have glasses too, right? And the first time I put them on and I could see stars was like a whole anyway. But that like I've been into space and journey like that. It just captivated me from a really young age. So I wanted to be an astronaut. So I went to school for aeronautical engineering and took a whole bunch of science thing that always like worked in my brain. And then along the way, I realized that that wasn't exactly blah, 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 what I wanted to do. And then I was working as an engineer for a bit, but I was also doing a lot of yoga. So I went through yoga teacher training really for my own practice. And the love of that was like the pull. So I taught yoga and ran a yoga studio for about 20 years ish. And my 2012 awakening was to set aside any of the 4-dimensional looping lineage practices, if you will. I was like, the yoga thing just blew up for me. I was like, I can't do that anymore. And I opened the center that I run and own and luxuriate in now. It's called Inner Space. And it's cool because like all those things existed like almost like separate conversations or separate parts of me, if you will. Like people that came for yoga classes would expect a very specific thing, but I was always like pushing the shamanic stuff in there. Oh yeah, I did a lot of shamanic training along the way. It was just more like, so I could see, I did have all those different hats, and you could see like all the different people are having, like they're all going to the same spot, right? We're all like finding that truth at the top of the mountain. Just everyone's got their own path up there. And so we talked that yoga practice, even in the yoga lineage, they would talk about you do the hatha yoga, the physical yoga, just to clear and purify your nadis, your energy streams and channels, so that you can bring in more light, or that you can bring in more, that you like, it's all about that, like bringing they would call them the samskaras, the subtle impressions, like all the things that have ever happened in your life and lifetimes, and like bring them up to the surface to be purified and cleared so you could be more of a conduit of light. And putting the space stuff in has been in the last 5, 6, 7 years that I was like, for me, they all go together. And then when I remembered the art of gridworking and gatekeeping, I was like, oh, like it's all when it kind of clicks it all in together. It's like, oh, these are all the same things, just in different ways. So I guess how I can speak to, you asked me how I could speak to the science stuff, is that's always how my brains work. But also, I guess candidly, like when I was a kid, I always had imaginary friends that were around me. And now like I can recognize like, oh, those were like pillars of light and light beings that were just like hanging out with me until it wasn't cool anymore when I was like in junior high or high school. I was like, all right, I probably shouldn't be talking to like whatever. So I already don't have a lot of friends, so I should probably not talk about, they just fell to the side, as you do when you grow. But now I'm like, oh, those are like my galactic family, my light family, da da da. And a lot having my children, I feel like was that opened up a lot for me, because I had already had all the scientific and the yoga speed, like all that. Yoga got really interesting for me, and I loved the act of it too, but it got really interesting for me when I dug into the tantras and the Vedas, like the cosmological. I was like, oh, there's so much about the light body, about the vehicle about cosmology. And the ancient yogis would talk about getting in their body light spaceship and going up and talking to star elders, and like, oh, that's like not the, there's 1,001 power yoga studios where we can do 400 chaturangas and down dogs and turn the heat up and just sweat. That's prevalent in our society. Finding the yoga that's talking about getting into your light ship and working with the cosmos and like visiting other galaxies, like that's yoga too. It's just less available in our society. but it's available here at Interspace, so come on down. I don't know if that answers it. I see people privately. I do a lot of sound, and it's been 10 years here at Interspace, so it's changed a lot. I just went through my 10-year anniversary, December 8th, 9th, 10th.
Nice.
Thank you. That was a lot. I feel like I'm talking a mile a minute, but thanks for the space.
I will just mention, was the book that you referred to, was that The Body Keeps the Score? Or was that something different?
I read it, so I don't know. I just know a lot of people were mentioning it to me.
Yeah, but it was that book. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
can I finish one little Interspace? So I should so I do see people privately, individual things. I do have a group. I have an online course platform where I'm rolling out more and more of that cosmological meets body meets energy field. And I have a lot more coming down the pipeline in that too. So people can check out. And my website's innerspacevoyages.com if anyone wants to see. And I do a blog, I have a YouTube channel. I try to share as much of whatever's current in the moment. This fall has brought me, I'm also really very much involved in the eclipse cycles that we're in right now, and the solar and lunar eclipses. And we're in this big 2017, 2024 bookended eclipse cycle over here in the North America. So that's a whole different topic, but that's taken a lot of my personal focus, Gridworker, Gatekeeper. And I was so blessed in October. I traveled to Texas, which is it's quite far away from me, and I was in a good way, but I went by myself and I was under the solar eclipse. And we could talk about that for hours and hours if you wanted to, but that was it changed me in ways that I'm still unpacking now. And I've been really in the lunar moment of more quiet stillness and integration. But I feel like it's this time now. So having this conversation with you is part of I said, coming back out into the talking light.
Come back out into the sun. Couple of housekeeping things I've not been able to share. They've changed the format of sharing, and I can't concentrate on what you're saying and listen and work out how to do that. So if anybody wishes to share this along to any groups or on their page, to any groups that you think might find this useful, that would be really helpful. What else and it's Innerspace Voyagers, not Voyages. So it's got the R in, or Voyages.
Voyages, no R.
Voyages, right. And I will make sure when I put that on YouTube, I'll put a link to that as well. There's a few directions to go in here. I wonder, because you've mentioned gatekeeping a few times, if you could just explain a little from your perspective what gatekeeping is.
Sure. Here I'm now I'm distracted because I'm sharing it around, doing what you're sharing it around, and I can share it on my wall too. But I just shared it on Sology and a few of my groups. Gatekeeping is so many things, but simply, so what a gate is a barrier that blocks an opening that opens and closes. In real simple. In code language, in computer speak, it's the same, but it's a gateway is also a distribution center for information. So gatekeeping is being aware of the opening and closing doorways, if you will, of this, a lot of what we've been talking about the light, the source, the sunlight, the celestial light coming through and interfacing with the energy grids of our human bodies, of the earth body, of the solar system body. So gatekeepers pay attention to that flow. And I think there's a lot of different roles of gatekeepers, especially as I work into it more and more, but that some people's job is to open up the gateway so the flow can come through, and then make sure it's closed at the end. For me, it's so interesting you asked that, because yesterday we had a huge storm. Yesterday and the night before, 5 inches of rain came in 12 hours, and the wind was one of the biggest storms I've been in a while. And anyway, so I was out with the riverways because everything's like at peak capacity, if not flooding around. And I was just checking out some of my spots, and I was called this morning to go to this place that is two local rivers come together, and I was there working. So it was like back, whatever it was, 2019 maybe. And my own self, I was like, what's the difference between doing grid keeping and gatekeeping? Like I know what gridwork, gridwork or gridkeeping kind of mean the same, what that is, but this gatekeeping stuff. And then I had this spot. So I have the Blackstone River near me and then the West River, and they flow together. And I just had in my, it just looks the way that the rivers flow, it kind of looks like a heart, like lobes of the heart. And there was something about it, like when I was there, and then we have a canal here, so that only the rivers come together when it's like there's a lot of water, but they're like separate right now, the way it's set. This is the Blackstone Canal and the Blackstone River. And I was there doing grid work at this spot, and I had this feeling. I was like, I feel like this is a gate. I feel like I'm doing gatekeeping now. Like, what does that mean exactly? And I got back to my car, and there was a placard there, like right in front of my car that I hadn't seen before. And it was like, this is a gateway. It was just like had the canal was done to move goods, and it was before the railroads. It was a travel corridor, and so they had a lot of gates that would lift and lower the water, and then but it was just one of those moments where I was like, oh, that was the first time that I was like, yes, you are doing gate work. And so any of us might get signs like that. Or it's like, what? So on the earth plane, it was like water flow here in my landscape, in my local community. But then like those places, I feel like they're multidimensional because that's just like the access point for my human self. But then what's happening like from the galactic rivers, and I was even reading this morning when I was reading a little bit about Galactic Centre stuff, because I thought we might talk about that just to like freshen myself up a little. They were talking about cosmic streams and rivers. So it's really these influxes. So for me, gate work in my courses, my offering, like trying to share with other people and encouraging them to open up their own skill sets for gate work. I've divided gatekeeping into what I call terrestrial gatekeeping and celestial gatekeeping. So terrestrial might be like what I did this morning, like going out to the places, like working with sacred sites, working with your landscape, and working with the gates that are more physical and tangible. And the celestial gatekeeping for me is working with the celestial sphere and like what we're talking about, where the sun is in the sky, what the alignments are. And I feel like as Julie Dhara, I do both of those almost equally and like different, and they're sort of all combined too. That's a long answer of like, what is gatekeeping? It's really opening to the flows of wisdom, knowledge, light codes, light source, conducting it in, bringing it in, co-creating with it. Because like anything, like the sun is gonna, talk to you more. Like what you put your attention into is what comes. So it's like I feel like when we as our human beings open up our own energy field to be a conduit and to work with the gates, it's just like more comes, and then we're the flow that downloads it, if you will, into the grids of the earth.
Yeah, like anchor points, lightning rod kind of.
Yeah. Conductors.
Yeah. You mentioned grid workers, grid keepers. Seeing as we're on this flow, do you want to just explain that a little? I know a lot of people listening will know, but for those that don't. And there was also a question of what's the difference between a gate and a portal, but let's come to that after.
What was the first question? Like what to like talk about what grid keeping and grid work
Yeah.
is? Yeah, sure. So as a human being, if I went to an acupuncturist and they were like tasked with making sure my meridians and like they read the field of my energy body through different, pulses and tongues and whatever, and that's their job to increase the flow. So the earth body is a living living, breathing, sentient being. Some folks call her Gaia, some call it Terra Nova, Earth. The Earth itself, this living, breathing being, grid workers are aware of that. Like, so, like an acupuncturist would be aware of the field, or a yoga practitioner is aware of the field flow. So there's a distinction of grid work and grid keeping. I feel like grid work was a thing a lot of us did for years and years, of like going out on the land and clearing the dark energy, and like sacred site work, and like doing a lot of that. A lot of that has, I'm not saying I never do that anymore, but like a slightly different grid keeping, or James Tiburon called it earth keepers, are more, instead of feeling like, oh, I have to go save the earth, or, oh, I have to go change things, or, oh, I have to do things. It's like, no, you're just there and you're being. Keeping is more of a big picture or more passive thing. Does that mean not passive, but it's like you're keeping the flow. So you're aware of the energy lines, both ley lines and the light grids and the crystalline grids. There's a lot of different levels of the earth grids. And yeah, so maybe that's like grid working is a little more with the magnetic and the ley lines and like travel and the visiting. The grid keeping is more like seeing the geometric flux and the light grids and the crystalline grids and being aware. So different parts of the earth will call you in to work with, whether you go in person or you work remotely. You're just aware of an awareness. You let it come into your field and you allow in as much of the knowledge of that as you can. And just, but again, like with your awareness, more flow comes. Like with an acupuncturist would insert needles here or there. Like some grid workers go out and put crystals here or there. Some just go with their bodies. Some go with their sound tools. A lot of my friends use their voices, vocal toning. It's like we're there to make sure the flow of energy on the earth body is flowy and good and movable as possible, so everything flows. And like in your human body, when your energy is flowing well, you're in good shape, right? So it's that working with the energy. So much shorter answer would be grid keeping is keeping and working with the energetic multidimensional grids of the earth.
And yeah, there was a question in the comments of the difference between gates and portals, if there is one.
Yeah, they are very different. I know confessions of a grid. Like I don't know if I totally understand. So many people mean so many different things about portals. I guess the similar thing is they're both openings. Mm. A lot of people talk about like, oh, I'm going into the woods and I'm opening a portal, and I got this portal, a fairy portal. And like, I just luckily have never been called to do that, so I'm not like a pop-up portal kind of gal. But portals, I think, are more individual or like temporary, or like a door, like a certain specific doorway. Like I hear portals used like a portal to the fairy realms, a portal to this, like a portal, like more like a wormhole or a doorway, more about travel, more about connection, more about entering realms, either angelics or fairies or dragons or unicorns. It's like portals, I think, are more like working with elementals. Does that make sense? Is that how you use them too? But gatekeeping is more apertures. I guess just when I get quiet, it's like apertures of God. They talk about the fontanelle as like where your spirit comes into the body. It's like gatekeeping is more universal, or more about like the giant flow of life force. Does that sound resonant?
Yeah, thank you.
What about you? What's your difference between, like, what do you use portals for?
To me, when earth energy lines cross, that creates like a vortex, which I would assume my experience has been that is also a bit of a portal. So it can be a bit of a hotspot, a bit of a place where perhaps more cosmic energy would be focused in going into the earth. But I would also, I concur with everything that you said, but yeah, there are areas of the planet that feel like portals to other dimensions as well, to other worlds. So you might just have a feeling if you're walking out in nature, there might be trees that hang over and create, a bit of an archway. And as you walk through those, it's like, whoa, this feels different on this side of that step than it felt on that side. And you know that you've kind of gone into a bit of a magical kind of space where everything perhaps is a bit more magnified. The colors might seem a bit brighter. You might be just more aware of things around you, and you might be more likely to feel those connections with say the nature realms. You might hear the voices from the trees more at those times. There's a very noisy helicopter going over just as we speak. You might be more more aware of like the nature spirits, the fairies, the elementals, that kind of thing. Yeah, that's all that is coming to mind.
Yeah, so portals are like doorways to other dimensions or other realms.
And I think we're all portals.
Gateways, when you were talking, yeah, portals and gateways are more like a fire hose of universal consciousness. Like when you open a gateway, like it's just a cosmic river comes at you. But whereas portal is more like has a sweeter like step through into magic realm, right? Is that Matt what you're saying?
Yeah.
What you're
Yeah. I was going to also ask you, going back to what we touched on before and what you were saying about the eclipse in Texas. So from what I gather, I don't know if that was northeast to southwest or northwest to southeast, where the light crossed onto the earth. But from what I'm gathering, there are 3 eclipses that have similar. 2 go this way and 1 goes that way, which creates an X, and that X is in Texas. I wondered if you.
I would be delighted to talk about that. So there's a total solar eclipse in August of 2017, and that pathway went from Oregon coast to the Carolinas. So it went across the United States that way. There was an annular solar eclipse, meaning it's like a ring of fire, like it doesn't quite line up to block it out. That happened October 14th, 2023. And that was from from Mexico up across Texas. Wait, my brain. I haven't looked at that map in a while. That might be wrong, but I'll keep talking. So there was an annular eclipse October 14th, 2023. But the next total solar eclipse is on April 8th, 2024. And that's the one, right? I was speaking wrong. That one runs from Mexico up to like my zone up here, up to like New Brunswick, Canada. So the 2017 and then the 2024 cross each other. And that crossroads is in the United States here in Southern Illinois. It's in near Carbondale, Illinois. And that section of Illinois is called Little Egypt. So there's a whole, so that crossroads is very important, that crux. And there are like these 2 lobes, if you will, or like 2 wings of the dove that move from that heart spot. And does that answer what you want? So the one that I went to, there was also another X that crossed the 2023 eclipse path line and the 2024 eclipse path line. That's right. The one that I went to in 2023, October, went from up in Oregon coast. It kind of mirrored, it just went on a slightly different path. So the 3 of them form like a little A in the middle. But the October annular eclipse was from the Oregon coast down across in through Texas and down out to the Gulf. And so there's crossroads in Texas that 2 eclipse paths crossed, and there was another one in Southern Illinois. But the 3 of them are all kind of playing out and unlocking a lot of freedom codes in this continent. And I could say a lot more, but I thought I'd ask, did you have a specific thing you wanted to talk about with it? Or?
No. No, you've answered one of the questions, which was if you knew where it was, where that
Whether
X.
yeah,
Yeah. If there is more that you want to speak on around that,
sure. I
feel
feel like
free.
it's the most like important, like strongest soul call of work that I'm doing right now. But I'm just kind of doing it quietly. So in my own time. So I'd love to talk about it. When the 2017 eclipse came through, I wasn't directly under it to see it fully, but I was, we had a partial, but the energy of it in that crossroads activity, the 2017 to 2024 corridor is really opening the dove of peace, the New Jerusalem, the freedom codes, and this whole thing of the they call it the Great North American Eclipse. So we're activating and uniting our Lemurian aspects and our Atlantean aspects. And that X is really the dovetailing or the intertwining of those energies. So the connection from the Pacific across and over to the Atlantic, and then another Pacific up and over to the Atlantic, the crossroads of the eclipse. So a lot of it came into my attention to pay attention to in the 2017, 2019, like every eclipse we've had in between has been part of it. But the main thing is to open up the codes of peace and equality and freedom for all. And like any revolution, I know Sandra Walter said this to me one time, or she said it in a group sharing, that the peace, when you open up freedom codes, it's not the soft, fluffy stuff. It's like freedom codes come with the revolution. They come with this whole thing. So when I was shown to really pay attention to the eclipse crossroads, I kept like mapping it and looking at it and wanting to go and see things. But that like crossroads part, there's been a lot that's happened in the United States on that central line. So I was really called the books, the Keys of Enoch. Have you read that, worked with that book, or worked that, but you've heard Todd had them at Solar, the first Sology Fest, right? The Perdax, the husband and wife team that channeled through this work. But I kept seeing that map. So there's Eclipse, and I will have I've been working on it since forever, but I will have a big sharing to put up for people to go into this a little more. So if you're interested in this at all, contact me and I'll put you in touch with that. But I kept seeing that dove. So there's like the central channel of the North American continent. And then there are the two wings that are created by the lobes of the X, the wider parts of the X. And I saw that online, but it's like you couldn't really read it. In our country, we had, there was a Black gentleman who was killed. And it started the whole like Black Lives Matter revolution, speaking up, like no more. There's a lot of that happening in the United States right now. And I kept wanting to look at that on the map because that was in Duluth, in Minneapolis, and then it's right above where the center line of the eclipse is. And then down, the tip of it goes down to Galveston, Texas, to Houston, Texas. So that whole central line, there's been a lot of upheaval and such going on. But anyway, I bought that book and have like been channeling. It's not like a book that you read front to back. It's like a very dense, but it's got all the stuff. It was like, that was one of those moments where the things that had been shown in the light body and the technology and like Arcturian, like all the star stuff, it's like, it's all there. I was like, oh, I've been working on this all along. But that the New Jerusalem codes here in the United States, it's like, this is supposed to be the land of, it's hard to even say this anymore. It's like freedom and opportunity and freedom, but it's like, it's all built on a house of cards of lies and killing and destruction. And so like a lot of that stuff is just really erupting right now. The eclipse cycle is to me is like reclaiming, it's like that, all the technology, the light being technology from your Lemurian aspects, like bringing all the parts of you that are the celestial gatekeeper, the part of you that like are navigate by the stars, the parts of you that work with the crystalline keepers, the parts of you that work with sound technology, your Atlantean stuff, like all the ridding ourselves of the distortions of all the stories and bringing in the highest aspects of like, what is your soul's Atlantean technology? It could be crystalline, right? For us both is for sure sound coding, right? Working with sound healing, making a sound chamber, a light chamber for that, and clearing through all the distortions and bringing through and unifying our own Atlantean and Lemurian technology, light technology. So the eclipse, each like minor eclipse, they have the 2017 one and the 2024 one, but each one acts like a little bit of like a combination lock of like, oh, we'll clear these things. Part of what I'm doing in one of my online courses is going through and noting like all the like minuscule, the smaller eclipses that were within. Like there was one in, I think it was 2019, that was on December 26th. And the eclipses are all over the world, but they each act like a little key code as we unlock the gates of this larger, like, what does it mean for, like, what does truly freedom for all souls? Like, what does that mean, right? It's not kids in cages at the southern border. It's not school shootings, right? It's not police officers, and like, it's not politicians. It's not, it's, these things that it's not are like we talked about before, like they're all bubbling to the surface in this most disharmonious way, but in this way of like to really clear the landscape of all of that that's been through. So that's a off the cuff, like it's like with the eclipse stuff, it is like for each of us, I feel like it's so personal and so up leveling and like so monumental. It's hard to even put it in human words. Like people are like, oh, you went to the eclipse. I'm like, yeah, it was cool. It's not even like being under it or seeing it. Like we can all work with it no matter where on the globe we are. One of the pieces that's been coming through is really strong for me. So one of the Lemurian technologies I was talking about are the golden solar discs, right? Have you heard of that? So the golden solar discs were always meant to work in conjunction with the silver lunar discs. The silver lunar discs are much less talked about. The first person I heard talking about them was Salantra King. Remember her? She would talk often about the silver ray. So when you asked me, like, what do you want to talk about on Tuesday? I was like, oh, let's talk about the silver and gold. Like, this is sort of like, so the golden discs, even if we go back and look at some of the tales from Central America, before the Spain came over and conquered the indigenous, the Aztec population that was there, they would talk about bringing Montezuma like that. They would bring a gold, like a literal gold disc and a silver disc. They're always done together. But the golden solar discs are the mythology of them, or the tales that are told about them. Is there a technology from Lemuria, and the golden discs work to help balance the grids of the galaxies. They're like a tuner, an apparatus, if you will. But they're always put like on like an island, often in the middle of a lake. But the silver lunar discs are like the reflector pools that are like underneath them, and they work more with the stars and the night sky, and like they reflect so the silver and gold are really meant to be together. And when the disc of the solar disc and the lunar disc really unite and come together, that's what we would call an eclipse here. So that technology is really zero, some people call it zero pointing, or finding neutral, finding that place of union, that oneness place. So eclipse energy is very tumultuous, very turns up all the like stuff, but when after it does, it comes into this like sacred union. of sun and moon, masculine and feminine, busyness and stillness, and it just moves into this oneness state.
I was going to ask you, you've just partially done it with that, but I was going to say to you how, just to go back a little bit, I've never been present for a full solar eclipse. I was outside and watching in the 90s before I kind of got into all this, a partial solar eclipse. It was quite a big one. And I noticed that everything went quiet, it wasn't like a cloud going in front of the sun. There's a real difference. The birds stop singing, everything it's like everything holds its breath. And I was wondering if you can, first of all, it's a miracle. The moon just fits. So that in itself is just incredible. But from a scientific perspective, how does that happen that then the energies of the earth are affected? Is that something that you've looked at? Is that something that you're able to speak to?
There's so much. Yeah, the stillness is it. So I've now realized the difference of being there and being under it. It's like I'm told my husband and my kids, I'm like, that's it. Anytime there's another one, I'm there. I don't care where on the globe it is. I'm going. That's my new. That's official. But there aren't. It's a rare event, so there aren't that many left, if you will. There's a lot. It's good, but that still point, yes, everything gets it was truly incredible, Denise. I've never experienced anything like it. The whole everything just is stops. It was amazing and quiet. When the darkness of it came through, I was staying in a really rural place that had a great vista, but there was a farm down the way, and so the roosters did crow and a donkey or two bayed, but it was everything. It was you said the birds just nobody was even breathing. It was just the most thing. Yeah, I was oh, that's what they mean by 0 point. Okay, I've never really, I've experienced glimpses of it and moments of it a lot of times in my life, but nothing like the level of what happened for me in October. But the fact that the sun and the moon block each other, that's not going to be all the time for our great grandchildren. That might not even be true for them anymore. It is hundreds of thousands of years, tens of thousands of years. But it's just in this time that we're alive on Earth that eclipses can even happen. They haven't happened because the moon moves itself relative to the Earth. And if they weren't quite at that, it's the diameter of them that make it all happen. So when the Earth is in a different part of its, that's what I mean by it might not always happen. But yes, the quietness was good. What was the second part of your question?
Kind of the science behind why it's so impactful.
Yeah. So this is all from, remember James Tiburon, who channeled a lot of Metatron? A lot of his work, which is, his website's down now, which was fine. He passed away several years ago. But I've been going through looking for breadcrumbs. I've been trying to download as much of his content and information and keep it on my computer as I can to for myself and to share it out there. Because once someone passes, and his wife passed, who keeps up, who's going to keep up my website when I'm in another realm? Nobody. Anyway, he has rich with information. He runs, I would say, earthkeeper.com to quote him, but it's not there anymore. His take on it is that the ionosphere, and he was quoting some other earth scientists, and I'll go try to find it. Maybe her last name is Bartho, something like that. Did some studies about what happens to the ionosphere. So he was all about the difference between cations and anions, or positive charge and negative charge. And one of the things, you talked about the cross of the ley lines and how it feels sacred there. Sacred sites are often put in these places of either magnetic anomaly or a difference in the background radiation, the ratio between cations and anions, positive charge and negative charge. And this is best my brain can remember it. Forgive me if any of the numbers aren't quite right. But I think he was saying that mostly in general, like the background radiation or that difference is like in the sixes, right? Between like the level of cations and anions. And then at sacred sites or under eclipses, that changes and like moves down to like a 1 or a 1.5. Like with a ratio, there's just more, the ratio between the negative and the positive ions changes. And then that changes, like that's what allows a lot of the ancient shamans to have their visions. It's like that background level of radiation or what you're in between the cations and the anions changes how your brain works. You move into a different brain state, you know, between the theta and the delta, the gamma, the different brainwave state, so that you can experience direct connection. So this is how anyone would have like a vision or download or channel. Like you have to be in the brainwave state for your human brain to receive that. Going to a sacred site or being under eclipse changes it. So how it changes, like eclipses do change and transform the earth grids. And they do it by like that path that we like would see much more in solar eclipses than lunar eclipses. Lunar eclipses do it too, but the ratio of cations to anions in the ionosphere, the sphere of the earth, changes, especially under the pathways. And it quite literally changes the nature of your brain so that you're more able to communicate interdimensionally.
Wow,
So,
thank you. I've never heard that spoken before. That's amazing. And just remind, so it changes. Do you know, did you say, and I've just forgotten, so the ratio of cations to anions changes. Does it become more positively charged or negatively charged?
can you tell them on the computer? Go right to it. I'm in my folder of Metatron Gridkeeper. Let me see if I can just find it so I can be like.
And negative ions, for example, that's what we get at the beaches. That's when the waves crash over, they create
Yes,
negative
or like why
ions
people put in
waterfalls and
yes. Maybe it's not that important. If you're supposed to be shared with everyone, you will come through right now. If not, I will put it through later. That's fine. So I do on my blog, because I knew after his passing, like I wanted to keep the living library of his work going. So I went through and I've downloaded a bunch of his stuff and put it up on my website. So I do have a section of my blog that's devoted to some of these things if people wanted to read more.
Did you catch them all or did you miss some?
I have been clearly, I'm sure I missed some, but I pretty thorough. So his website had, and a lot of his books are out of print, and some of them I went like, you know, some of them I spent like $300 on eBay to find the last copy of the book. So I've been pretty, I have a lot. I'd say I have 98% of his stuff.
Awesome.
But he has a lot of stuff about the eclipse. I can't find it right off the top, so maybe it's not that important, but I will go look it up. I think I might have, he does have a few YouTube pages still up, and I think I transcribed from some of the videos, some of the stuff, but I'll go back and find it, and if you want, drop it in a comment. But it's it's the level of ratio between positive and negative. So he found this when he would go to he was a geologist and traveled all around and would go to a lot of sacred sites for work, and then just took it up as his soul hobby, love hobby, like we do, right? And but he went to one of the vortexes and like was measuring. He had someone else with him, another scientist was measuring, and like figured out that background radiation level is what allows, you know, like some shamans would use an herb or a hallucinogen or something that would change, but you necessarily need to do that you know, we can all do it in our own waking state too, but like moving yourself into that right brain chemistry where the communication is clear and strong.
Mm. And that was really interesting what you said about the solar discs and the lunar discs as well, and that connection with the eclipse.
Yes, that yes, the solar discs and the lunar disc. I was like, oh yeah, that like came through to me a year or two ago to put together that, like, because it is the disk of the sun and the disk of the moon uniting in our sky that makes the eclipse. But yeah, the silver lunar discs have been coming through really strong again in 2023 and bringing them back into the awareness field of the grid keepers and gatekeepers, like all of us that care about this kind of thing. Even some of the, so the other side is starting to go. The Lemurian lore is that towards the end of Lemuria, some of the sages, the wisdom keepers, knew that the end was coming, right? Have you heard that they talk about they went into inner earth or into Telos to go underground? Some people say maybe because a solar cataclysmic event was coming, or like that the fall of Atlantis is one thing, the end of Lemuria is another tale. But at the end, these wisdom keepers would use these golden solar discs to align and keep organized, if you will, like the grids, like the Earth and its place in the solar system and the galaxy. But these golden solar discs worked for many things. But they say they took 12 of them and they moved them into different parts of the Earth for safekeeping. So it sounds similar to the Atlantis tales, right? Where they take the Atlantean crystals and move them to different, like they're both similar things. So they took these 12 discs, and then one is said to be in Bolivia at Lake Titicaca, but they talk about putting the golden solar disc on this island in the middle of the lake and then putting it underground, like under the lake for like safekeeping. But that, I feel like the lake worked with it just as well. Like the golden solar disc would be up there shining, like the sun needs the reflective, or like needs the moon to cross code with. And the solar golden disc locations around the globe are have been coming back more online and are more active as we move through these phases of ascension. So.
And was anything shared about the lunar discs as well? Like
There's a lot less shared about the lunar discs. So I think it's like one of my roles and all of our roles to connect with them. But the silver lunar disc, I was saying, like I heard Salantra King is the one that first spoke of them, and like just kind of, you know, it gets your attention in the back, like, ooh, that's something I need to pay attention to. Silver lunar discs, I haven't heard of that, but of course it makes sense that they work, you know, there's always a yin and a yang, that they work together in conjunction. So I feel like the solar disc is the projector and the transmitter, you know, like the sun is, but the lunar discs would work more as the receiver. And that, like, in the stillness
and reflector.
Yeah,
maybe. Interesting.
it's so fun to talk to you, Denise. We could go on. What are you doing for the solstice? Do you have a secret plan?
I am going on the land on the 21st. I've been watching some of the stuff over the last year or so of Rory Duff. I don't know if you've heard of Rory Duff. He's an English guy that has been working on the ley lines of the Earth, working out like when they get stronger, when they get weak, and kind of measuring them, and been doing maps for as much of the world as he's been able to. And he shared that it's the energy of the ley lines gets stronger in the lead up to the eclipse, and once the eclipse happens, it starts to go eclipse down again.
Solstice?
Sorry, solstice.
Probably both, but I just didn't know which one you were talking about.
Yeah, no, I did mean solstice. Well, all of them, the solstice and the equinoxes as well. So it's actually the day before that he suggests going onto the land rather than the day of. So I don't know what that looks like at the moment, whether I might well just be in my garden, but I'll be connecting with the land and just seeing, if I'm guided to do anything with that or just sit quietly with that. He also says that all the ley lines have expanded, and the period of time that they get bigger for has got much longer. So it's not going to be too long before there's actually no space between them, because it's 4 times a year anyway, and the period before and the period after have both increased. That the gap where they're not at that highest level is much smaller. So it won't be that many years before there is no gap, which that fascinates me. Like what is going to happen to the meridians of the earth, the ley lines of the earth at that time, and will more people then feel them, be aware of them? Because I feel that's part of our evolution as humans, that more and more people will be sensing that energy and feeling the energy of the earth. Just energies generally, but particularly the energies of the earth. Yeah.
Fascinating. And like if they're getting wider and wider, then they'll cover the whole earth too.
Yeah.
Right? Like time and space.
Yeah, because even the smaller ones, they must be getting bigger as well. It's not just the big ley lines, there's all these little tributaries as well.
Yeah. Like a lot of cryon sharing and that channels, and a lot of other shares too. Talked about the difference, that the ley lines are associated with the magnetic grids of the earth.
Mm.
And Gridkeepers have been in the process of working with the crystalline grid of the earth, so that it's not, I don't want to call it outmoded technology, but the metallic, the magnetic grid ley lines are just one. They're talking about taking that, like, of the information that's in the magnetic grids, and like the crystalline grid is the new operating system of Earth too. So maybe that'll be like that gradual graduation, if you will, from doing grid keeping with the magnetic lines and the ley lines. Just like it will always be like a thing, because like that we'll always have a magnetosphere and magnetic lines, but that working with the crystalline, it's less, it's more quantum. The magnetic ley lines had a very predictable and like place-based, if you will. Like you were saying, they cross at certain places and the sites are there, and that's more like mappy. The crystalline grids kind of morph in and out of existence. They're less tangible or less predictable, if you will.
Less static.
Kind of like they're like a lava lamp, or if you will, like a grid, like a grid of moving light. So there's less of that need to do it on a certain date or a certain spot. It's like all the time thing.
Yeah, interesting.
So
you mentioned that you've got these gatherings coming up. Is there anything else that you want to share about that? And just remind me of your website. So innerspacevoyagers.com.
That is the main way to get me, yeah. And I have an email list people can join up on. I feel like, do you feel the like, we've all felt the like Facebook thing crumbling for a while now, right? But it's like it's getting weirder and weirder. So it's good to stay connected in other realms. It's great. I'm glad we have it, because we're here on it now and talking to people. It's great, but it's always good if people want to join my email list. That's a great way to keep in touch. I do have a Facebook page. I have Instagram, but I'm less. I do a lot of like moment by moment, like sharing of the energy things on Facebook, because it's just like in my pocket on my phone. It's a little easier. But I have a lot of stuff on my website too. But I'll be updating. Everything's still in the amorphous planning stages, so I don't have a certain like date or this is happening then. But I am working on. I have a rainbow light body course, activating your rainbow light.
Oh, this is coming up a lot. This is really interesting.
The rainbow light body is a big, so we're moving into an 8-year. The 2024 is an 8-year. And on one of the times that the sun and Venus were conjuncting in the last few years, several times, there's a star of Venus or a star of Inanna, the 8-pointed star. So I have a whole sharing coming up with the 8-pointed star, the cosmic rainbow rays, and the rainbow light body. Another one that I'm working to launch, another voyage. So I call my immersions, or like the longer. So if you come see me for an hour or two, it's like a journey, right? So I'll see people individually or a group for a specific journey. And then my longer things I call voyages. We're voyaging into like an immersion. Another one that I'm doing, so I've sound, it's like an architect of light, like sound codes and how they create light. So the Sanskrit alphabet is one of the alphabets that's still alive on planet Earth that works with the sound codes, the Shabda. And there's a course that's been wanting to come through me for a long time, and I feel like we're all ready as a collective, is working with the Sanskrit bija mantras, like all the Sanskrit characters, and how they work with the chakras, the chakra petals, and sacred geometry, and how those create, like you can create with light and sound. So those are the realms that I'm moving into in 2024.
Yeah, beautiful. And I'll just share that I've been doing.
Yeah, I want to hear what.
Yeah, I've been doing dragon immersions, kind of monthly-ish since March. So working a lot more with the dragons, doing some dragon readings as well. And the rose frequency has been coming in a lot more, which I linked to Venus too. It was interesting you mentioned Venus. That reminded me of the rose connection and the rose lines of the earth. And I'm also guided, this is only just dropped in, of doing something actually with money. Working with the collective energy of money on the planet. David Manning mentioned the other day of, how did he word it, that lack is laced into money. And so if we have a lack,
L-U? Like
no, L-A.
Okay.
L-A-C-K is laced into the energy of money. So if you have that lack frequency, then there's this kind of interconnecting thing going on between money and lack and you and lack. So I'm feeling to do something with the collective energy of money in helping to shift that frequency, but also connecting us with the highest frequency of money, kind of bringing that higher frequency, because like everything, it's got like grungy, energies, but it's also got a much higher frequency. And most of the money, I would say, on the planet isn't at that higher frequency. But if we're of a higher frequency, then we're not necessarily resonant with those lower frequencies of money. So connecting us with the higher frequencies of money, making that connection. Yeah, I haven't fully got it yet, but that's been dropping in as something to do. And the last dragon immersion, we did connect to the higher frequencies of money via the dragons. And I feel there'll be something bigger, as you would say, a bigger voyage, to do with abundance and specifically money. And it is something that we don't always speak about in the spiritual world, like money specifically. But I think there's a lot of healing, a lot of shadow work, a lot of whatever you might call it, relating to money itself and lack, especially in survival. So
yeah, it's all energy. Like money is good if it's good. Yeah, that sounds fun.
Yeah, it's neutral, really, isn't it?
Do you ever want, so one of the things that came through to talk with you about today, and it's like put you on the spot too, but I'd love to do an episode like this with you and talk about using Andaras to talk to the dragons.
Oh,
I have a bunch of the Andaras come through as dragon communicators.
mm.
And it would be fun. You always come through in the dragon codes. Like it would be fun to bring them along. And if you ever want to do that, reach out. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's
not that anyone needs
with excitement
to do that, but like they're like a portal, fast track tangible talisman to they're like star communicators, really, or light being communicators.
Yeah, interesting. Cool.
Thanks everybody for hanging in with us. We've been on for a happy while.
Yes.
Thanks for having me for this long and all your great questions. And so lovely, Denise. I enjoy connecting with you every time. I feel like you're nice. We go out for coffee for like 4 days and get all the topics in.
Yeah, thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
being you and all you share in the world and your consistency and always showing up and shining your beautiful light. And so many of us appreciate you and what you're doing and the space you hold. And it's lovely.
Thank you. And thank you as always, because yeah, I could listen to you for hours and hours and dig up many, but what about this? And what about this? And how does that work? And yeah, my why, my inner why is always like fully switched on when we speak. So thank you so much, and thank you for all that you're doing for the planet, for your family, for everything. And thank you to everybody who's been with us. Feel free to share this along if you found it helpful, and I will see you next time, either on this medium, Love Speaks Love, or on the Heartful Living chat.
Speaking of high vibration money, Denise takes contributions for hosting this show, right, Denise? You'll put that in the comments.
Yeah, I will do. I haven't really been.
Appreciate a free flow of money coming into your inbox.
Absolutely,
I'll be a voice piece for that. Feel
Thank
free.
you.
If you enjoy this conversation, you can share a little light love.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody. We will see you next time. I will stop the live.